We live in an age where the self is the main character. Our faces are our brands, our opinions are our currency, and our worth somehow depends on hearts, likes, and views. It's easy to point at narcissists, the influencers, the self-absorbed, the loud ones. But what if I told you we all became narcissists, not by choice, but by design? This isn't just about vanity. It's about a society that manufactured the conditions for narcissism to thrive, psychologically, economically, and technologically. This is the story of how society created the ego trap. To understand today's narcissism, we need to rewind. Narcissism isn't new, it's ancient. The term comes from the Greek myth of Narcissus, the man who fell in love with his own reflection. But in psychology, narcissism isn't just vanity, it's a distortion of the self. The modern study of narcissism began with Sigmund Freud in 1914. Freud described primary narcissism as a normal part of child development, when an infant sees themselves as the center of the universe. But he also warned of secondary narcissism, when that self-focus becomes pathological, an adult stuck in a child's fantasy of omnipotence. Then came Heinz Kohut in the 1970s. He argued that narcissism isn't pure arrogance. It's a response to deep emotional injury, a fragile self that constantly needs validation to stay intact. Otto Kernberg, another psychoanalyst, agreed. He saw narcissism as a defense against emptiness. But here's the twist. Kohut and Kernberg didn't just describe individuals. They indirectly describe modern culture itself, a culture that rewards image over substance, attention over depth, and confidence over competence. In the mid-20th century, something changed. Sociologist Christopher Lasch predicted it in his 1979 classic, The Culture of Narcissism. He argued that America was evolving from a society built on community and production to one built on consumption and performance. The self became the main project. Mass advertising, television, and later, the internet trained us to see ourselves from the outside. Not who am I, but how do I appear? We stopped being and started performing. Even our language shifted. Self-help, self-branding, self-care, all noble ideas, but ones that eventually turned inward, feeding a market for identity. And as the Cold War ended and neoliberalism took over, we began to see life as a competition. Success became proof of worth. Failure became a personal defect. In that pressure cooker, narcissism stopped being an exception and became a survival strategy. Enter social media, the perfect laboratory for narcissism. In the early 2000s, psychologists Jean Twenger and W. Keith Campbell began studying what they called the narcissism epidemic. Their research showed a steady rise in narcissistic traits among college students between the 1980s and 2000s, long before TikTok or Instagram existed. Social media didn't create narcissism, it supercharged it. Platforms like Facebook and Instagram turned identity into a performance. Every post became a mirror, every like a microdose of validation. The algorithm rewards the loudest, prettiest, most extreme version of yourself, an idealized self, so people curate, exaggerate, filter, and perform to survive in the attention economy. The result? We've built an ecosystem where performing authenticity is more valuable than being authentic. We don't just post to share anymore, we post to exist. Not all narcissism looks the same. Psychologists identify several types. Grandiose narcissism, the classic look at me type. Confident, dominant, charismatic, but easily threatened. Vulnerable narcissism, quiet, self-doubting, hypersensitive to criticism, often feels unseen but secretly craves admiration. Collective narcissism, when entire groups or nations tie their identity to superiority. Our side is the best. Communal narcissism, when people derive ego from being the most selfless. I'm the kindest, most caring person here. In a digital world, all these forms have found a home. The influencer flaunting luxury lifestyles, the woke warrior chasing moral clout, the quiet scroller comparing their life to curated perfection. Each is a different face of the same core wound, a fragile sense of self needing external confirmation. At the root, narcissism is about identity instability. It's not love of self, it's dependence on others for self-worth. Every like, every view, every validation becomes psychological oxygen. And when the attention fades, we feel like we're fading with it. Neuroscientific studies show that social approval activates the same brain circuits as physical rewards, like food or money. So the chase for validation becomes addictive. Meanwhile, the ego trap tightens. The more we seek approval, the less authentic we become. The less authentic we are, the more approval we need. And so even when we realize what's happening, it's hard to escape. If it's so obvious, why can't we see it? Because narcissism hides behind what feels like normality. It's built into our culture, our economy, our technology. You can't escape it by deleting Instagram because it's not just the app, it's how we think, how we measure value, how we relate to others. The ego trap is invisible because it's rewarded. We admire confidence, self-promotion, hustle culture, qualities that look like strength, but often mask emptiness. We've confused visibility with value, and as long as the system rewards attention, narcissism will remain invisible because it feels like success. So, is there a way out? Maybe not completely, but there's awareness. Psychologists like Carl Rogers and Erich Fromm offered an alternative, the path of authentic selfhood. Rogers called it unconditional positive regard, being accepted without performance. Fromm spoke of being rather than having. It means rediscovering value that doesn't depend on external eyes. It means shifting from how do I look to what do I give. Maybe the real antidote to narcissism isn't humility, it's connection. When we feel seen as we are, not as we perform, the ego loosens its grip, because the opposite of narcissism isn't self-hatred, it's self-understanding. We all became narcissists, not because we wanted to, but because the world taught us that being seen is the same as being real. But maybe if we can learn to see ourselves beyond the mirror, we can finally find something deeper than reflection. We can find the self that doesn't need to perform.